There is something about the signs of Jesus that deeply unsettles us. They are not just miracles narrated to impress crowds or to attest to his divine authority in front of a people thirsty for wonders. They carry a hidden language, an invisible code that speaks directly to the subtlest laws of the universe. Upon close observation, we realize that each of the 7 signs described in the Gospel of John is not an isolated event, but a piece of a cosmic map. A path that, if followed with spiritual eyes, leads us to the perception of a reality that is beyond the physical veil, beyond appearances, beyond the ordinary logic that limits our daily experiences. Jesus the Christ did not just come to teach. He came to reveal. And in each sign, he unlocks one of the mechanisms that sustain the matrix of apparent reality. Instead of treating signs as isolated miracles, we need to see them as activations. They operate as keys to inner awakening. Each act is a living metaphor, a spiritual enactment that points to a new way of seeing and relating to life. If reality is a projection of consciousness, as both quantum science and spiritual traditions suggest, then Jesus did not just intervene in reality, but rewrote it. The first step is to understand that these events are not just ancient happenings. They are timeless archetypes. They speak of processes that continue to live within us. Just as dreams are composed of symbols that reveal the unconscious, Jesus' signs are symbolic visions that unravel humanity's spiritual unconscious. Each sign is a call for us to awaken from one level of perception and enter another. They do not just challenge natural laws, they transcend them, revealing that what we call reality is in fact a set of beliefs that can be dissolved and reconfigured. This is what makes these signs so subversive. They not only show God's power, but hint that this power can be accessed, recognized, and reflected by every awakened human being. They speak of a new spiritual order, where matter obeys consciousness, where the invisible organizes the visible, where faith alters events, and where the impossible bends before pure intention. Jesus acts, and the world responds. The Gospel of John does not use the word miracle like the other evangelists. He uses the term semeion, sign. This is not a technical detail. This is a clue. A miracle is an extraordinary event, but a sign is something that points to something beyond itself. It's a clue left on the path for those with eyes to see. This completely changes our approach. We are not here to admire the deeds of Jesus as awestruck spectators. We are here to decipher them. What do they point to? Where do they lead? What reality do they reveal behind the illusory fabric of the world? When you start to see the signs in this way, everything changes. They become mirrors. Each one reveals an aspect of the divine in us. Each one breaks a mental prison. Each one unlocks a perception that was dormant. There is a profound structure in the 7 signs. They are not in random order. There is a progression, an invisible ladder that goes from the ordinary to the extraordinary, from the physical to the spiritual, from the visible to the eternal. We begin with a simple transformation, water into wine, and we end with the triumph over death, the resurrection of Lazarus. It's as if each sign pushes the boundaries of reality a bit further. As if in each one Jesus was saying, this too can be overcome. This too is transient. This too can be rewritten. The pattern is clear. Reality is malleable. Consciousness shapes it. Matter does not rule life. Life shapes matter. Jesus did not perform these signs to prove something. He didn't need to prove anything. Each sign was a manifestation of a higher truth. And this truth is that the kingdom of God is here and now within us, waiting to be activated. The kingdom is not a place. It's a state of consciousness where the impossible becomes natural, where spiritual laws prevail over material laws. The signs are not tools of persuasion. They are invitations. Invitations for you to awaken, for you to transcend, for you to realize that the reality you live in is a projection of your frequency, and that, by changing your inner state, you alter the external manifestations. The literal reading of signs impoverishes their meaning. Seeing the act without recognizing the symbol is like watching a play without understanding the script. It's necessary to go beyond the surface. It's necessary to dive into the spiritual subtext. When Jesus turns water into wine, for example, he's not just saving a party. He's saying, The substance of life can be transfigured. When he walks on water, it's not just to shock his disciples. It's to show that the fear that sinks can be overcome by the presence that floats. When he calls Lazarus out of the tomb, it's not just to return a brother to his family. It's to remind us that death is but a curtain, and that behind it, there's always more life. These signs are a coded message. They operate on multiple levels. There is the physical level of the event. There is the emotional level of the witness's response. There is the symbolic level that activates the collective unconscious. And there is the mystical level that reorganizes the structures of reality. That's why so many scholars, mystics, and seekers return to these signs repeatedly. Each reading brings a new layer. Each contemplation reveals a new facet, and that is the intent of the Gospel of John, not to provide a linear historical narrative, but a spiritual journey in the form of progressive revelation. Each sign is a portal, each miracle, a reminder, each act, a revelation of the divine nature of the awakened human being. It is essential to understand that Jesus was not a magician. He did not manipulate reality with tricks. He reconfigured it with pure consciousness. He lived in absolute alignment with the source. There was no separation between him and the all. This unity is what allowed him to command situations with authority. He did not doubt. He did not hesitate. He did not need to convince reality of anything. He simply expressed the higher reality, and everything around adapted to his vibration. This is the true lesson of the signs. The external reality always responds to the internal state. Change your vibration, and the world changes with you. This is not a theory. It is a spiritual technology that Jesus demonstrated masterfully. Reality, as we know it, is merely one layer among many. The signs show that there are breaches, cracks in the fabric of time, space, and logic. Jesus operated in these cracks. He accessed higher layers of creation and brought them into the now. This is what I call rewriting reality. It's not about denying what is, but recognizing that what is can be transcended. Each sign is a reminder that there is more life, more truth, more possibilities. And this message is perhaps the most urgent in our times. In a world increasingly tied to matter, fear, and limitation, the signs of Jesus emerge as flashes of a forgotten reality. A reality where consciousness creates, where love transforms, and where the Spirit reigns. These signs do not belong to the past. They are eternal. They still speak. They still vibrate. They still call. The question is, are we listening? Are we seeing? Or are we just reading as one who skims over ancient stories without letting the soul awaken to what is being revealed? The language of the signs is subtle but powerful. It doesn't shout. It whispers. And only those who silence the noise of the world can hear. This is the call that Jesus cast in every sign. A call to a new reality. A call to a new humanity. We are about to walk through each of these signs. But before that, we need to remember, this is not an intellectual journey. It's a spiritual crossing. Each step we take through these signs will be an invitation to transformation, a mirror that will show us who we really are, what we carry, and what we can awaken. May you not just watch, but feel. May you not just understand, but live. May you not just hear the signs, but respond to them with the greatness of your own spirit. Because this roadmap is more than a story. It's a map, a portal, a key. The first sign recorded by John does not occur in a temple, nor at a moment of great spiritual upheaval, but at a wedding, a social event, routine, human. It is there, in the celebration of the union between two lives, that Jesus performs one of the most symbolic and profound acts of his mission, turning water into wine. At first glance, it seems a simple, almost trivial miracle, a gesture to save the bride and groom from embarrassment. However, beneath this ordinary surface lies one of the greatest secrets of spiritual alchemy, the power to transmute the essence of existence through awakened consciousness. By making this sign as his first public demonstration, Jesus announces that the divine does not dwell only in grand celestial events, but in the discrete folds of everyday life. That the transformation of the Spirit begins in the details, in the symbols, in the gestures that, to distracted eyes, seem irrelevant, but to the attentive heart, carry profound revelations. The wedding scene in Cana carries an archetypal symbolism. The union of the groom and the bride represents the merging of polarities, male and female, action and receptivity, spirit and matter. This is the backdrop against which Jesus performs his first transformative act. Water, the substance of life, represents the original state, yet unawakened, fluid, and potential. Wine, on the other hand, is the result of a process, fermentation, maturation, elevation of essence. What Jesus does is not a simple chemical trick, it is a living metaphor for the elevation of consciousness. He shows us that the original nature of being, represented by water, can be transformed, elevated, refined into something new. The wine, symbol of spiritual joy, of the divine presence, of consciousness in its full expression. This sign also leads us to confront time. The transformation of water into wine usually requires a lengthy process: planting, harvesting, stepping, fermenting, storing, maturing. But Jesus reconfigures time. He accesses a dimension where the result is already ready. This reveals that reality is not confined to linearity, that the Spirit operates outside of the ties of chronological time. And more than that, it suggests that spiritual evolution, which we normally imagine as long and gradual, can occur in moments of profound revelation. An insight, a change in perception, a genuine surrender can transmute a soul from stagnation to expansion. This is the hidden invitation in the first sign. Are you willing to allow your essence to be elevated now? Another subtle and powerful point lies in the presence of Mary, mother of Jesus, in this episode. It is she who notices the absence of wine. It is she who brings the need to her son. And it is she who, with quiet faith, tells the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Mary represents the feminine principle of intuition, surrender, and inner wisdom that recognizes the time of manifestation. She does not beg, does not demand, she simply trusts. Her role here is fundamental, as it teaches us that transformation begins with the perception of what is lacking, with inner listening, with silent trust. She represents the inner space where the miracle can happen, the space of faith before evidence. This reminds us that, for the sign to manifest in our lives, we need to make room. Recognizing the emptiness, the "there is no more wine," is the first step for the new reality to emerge. The stone jars used for Jewish purification are another element loaded with meaning. These were not ordinary jars. They were used in external cleansing rituals. By using them, Jesus shifts the focus from external purification to internal transformation. The water of ritual cleansing is converted into the wine of divine celebration. He does not just perform a chemical transformation, but subverts a traditional practice, pointing out that true purification is not external, but internal. It's no longer about following rituals, but about experiencing the essence. This gesture carries a veiled criticism of rigid religious structures and a call for authentic spiritual living. He begins his public mission not by reaffirming religious systems, but by revealing a new path, that of internal transformation as the source of all elevation. The quality of the wine is also notable. The master of ceremonies comments in surprise that the best wine has been saved for last, reversing the usual logic of banquets. This reversal is more than just a detail. It's a profound revelation about how life unfolds when guided by higher consciousness. The spiritual wine, the full joy, the inner clarity, are not at the beginning, but at the peak of maturation. Unlike the world, which offers superficial pleasure at the beginning and a hangover afterwards, the path of consciousness offers fulfillment at the end of the journey. This sign asserts that which is purest, most truthful, most elevated, the best wine, is reserved for those who persevere, those who surrender to the process, those who allow transformation. This transformation also invites us to reconsider the concept of matter. Jesus does not create wine from nothing. He starts with water, That is, the transformation takes place with what is already present. This is essential. Reality does not need to be destroyed to be transcended. It needs to be reconfigured. The consciousness of Christ does not reject matter. It transfigures it. And this applies to everything in our lives. Our traumas, memories, desires, contexts. Nothing needs to be eliminated. Everything can be elevated. The water of our history can become the wine of wisdom. Pain can become compassion. Fear can become faith. The ordinary can become sacred. This is the miracle, not escaping from reality, but seeing beyond it. The silence of Jesus before acting also speaks volumes. He does not act impulsively. There is a moment of hesitation, an enigmatic response to Mary. "My time has not yet come." This reveals that even signs obey a spiritual timing. Conscious action is not reactive, but aligned with the divine flow. This inner time, this harmony with the kairos, the opportune time, is a powerful lesson. In our lives, we often act out of time, force manifestations, try to rush processes. The first sign teaches us to wait for the right moment, to trust in the flow, to recognize the time of the Spirit, which does not always coincide with the time of the ego. At the end of the episode, Juon comments that, with this sign, Jesus revealed his glory and his disciples believed in him. The glory here is not fame, nor power, but the full manifestation of the divine essence. The sign was not a public spectacle, it was a discreet gesture, noticed only by a few. Still, this silent gesture had the power to generate genuine faith in those who were ready to see. This is profound. The true miracle is not what impresses, but what transforms. What generates internal conviction, not momentary excitement. The faith that is born from the sign is a faith that does not depend on proofs, but on recognition. The disciples did not believe because they understood, but because they felt, because something in their spirits recognized the truth of that gesture. This first sign, therefore, opens the series of 7 as an announcement and an invitation. An announcement that reality can be transformed, an invitation for this transformation to begin within us. It is the harbinger of a new alliance, where the divine manifests not through external rules, but from internal alchemy, where the miracle ceases to be an exception and becomes the natural expression of a consciousness aligned with the source. It is here, in this marriage, that we are called to reunite with our divine nature, to allow the water of our being to be elevated to the wine of fulfillment. This is where it all begins. And if everything starts with water that turns into wine, then we need to look at our own lives and ask ourselves, where do we still live as water? Where are we still just unawakened potential? Which areas of our journey are ready for transmutation? The invitation has been extended. The key has been shown. The first sign already echoes within us. The second sign recorded by John also takes place in Cana, the same place where water became wine. This geographical return is not by chance, but a symbolic reminder that each new level of revelation is anchored in the foundation of the previous one. After showing us the transmutation of essence, Jesus now reveals the power of consciousness over space, distance, and the apparent limitation between desire and manifestation. A royal official, a man of authority and status, descends from Capernaum to Cana in search of help. His son is on the brink of death. Pain knows no hierarchy. Human affliction is the starting point of many awakenings, and here, once again, it is suffering that opens the door to faith. The request is simple but laden with despair. Lord, come down before my son dies. And it is in this request that Jesus offers us one of the most powerful signs about reality. He does not go to the boy. He simply says, "Go, your son lives." And reality bends to the word. The invisible responds to the verb. Time and distance are undone by faith that manifests before evidence. The depth of this signal lies in the way it challenges conventional perception. We are accustomed to the idea that physical touch is necessary for healing, that presence is essential, that the outcome depends on proximity. But Jesus completely reconfigures this paradigm. He shows that the Spirit knows no barriers, that pure intention aligned with truth is capable of traversing time and space. When he says, "Your son lives," He is not merely declaring a healing. He is redesigning reality with his word. This forces us to confront the true nature of language. Words, when imbued with Christ consciousness, are not just sounds. They are creative commands. They vibrate with the energy of the source. They reorganize matter. They do not describe the world, they create it. Upon hearing these words, the officer decides to believe. This moment of decision is the heart of the sign. There is no proof, no visible evidence, just a statement. And yet, he sets off. This attitude is revolutionary. He relinquishes control. He doesn't insist that Jesus go with him. He doesn't demand a guarantee. He trusts. This is faith in its purest expression, accepting as real what is not yet manifested. Faith is not blind. It is visionary. It sees beyond appearance. It anticipates what is to come. And at this point, the second sign teaches us that true healing begins in the spirit before it manifests in the body. That every outward change is preceded by an inward shift. That to believe indeed is to co-create. The symbol of the sick child is also laden with archetypal meaning. The child represents the future, continuity, hope. Their illness indicates a rupture between the now and what is to come. When the future falls ill, the present descends into despair. The officer represents all of us when we look at our lives and feel that something we love, something that represents our dreams and plans, is dying. But Jesus intervenes at this critical point and shows that no future is doomed if faith is alive. His word restores the thread of life, reconnects the present to tomorrow with renewed hope. And it reminds us that, even when everything seems lost, reality can be rewritten by inner conviction. It's remarkable to note that upon returning home, the officer finds his servants who tell him, "Your son lives." And when asking at what time the fever left him, he discovers that it was exactly at the moment when Jesus had spoken. This precision is more than narrative coincidence. It's a fusion point between the visible and the invisible world. It shows that there is a cosmic synchronicity at work, a convergence between the word and the fact, between the declaration and the manifestation. This moment challenges us to review our understanding of time. It shows that there is a spiritual time, an eternal now where everything is already done. When we access this level of consciousness, reality begins to respond immediately, not because faith forced something, but because it resonated with what already is on the higher plane. This second sign also reveals the power of listening. The officer listens, but not only with his ears. He listens with his heart. He receives the word with openness. And this is essential. Often, we seek answers, but we are not ready to receive them. Listening is more than just capturing sound. It's about welcoming the profound meaning with total receptivity. When Jesus speaks, he is not merely informing. He is transmitting a vibration. He is planting a new reality in the heart of that man, and he, by accepting this seed, allows it to bear fruit. The miracle happens, in part, because there was someone willing to believe before seeing, because there was someone who welcomed the possibility that the impossible was already real. It is also relevant that this sign does not occur in the midst of a crowd, but in an intimate, personal encounter. This points to the discrete nature of true spiritual transformation. The greatest signs do not need a stage. They do not require applause. The universe changes in the silence of acceptance, in the sacred space of introspection. The officer returns alone, but carrying within him a new vibration. His home, which was once shadow and despair, will now become a space of testimony and faith. And this is another powerful teaching. The miracle does not end in healing. It expands. When he believes, his entire house believes. Faith is contagious. It radiates. It transforms the environment. This sign also represents a shift in frequency. The officer, previously guided by urgency and pain, now returns in peace. He went from a state of distress to a state of trust. And this internal change precedes the external healing. This teaches us something vital. What we need most is not for the situation to change, but for our vibration to change. When we move from despair into silent certainty, everything around begins to align. Reality responds not to our outcry, but to our vibration. and when it vibrates in unison with the living word of Christ, nothing remains the same. The second sign further expands the spiritual scope of Jesus' action. Now, it's no longer about transforming substances, but about touching life from a distance. This points to the non-local nature of divine consciousness. The Spirit is not limited by the body nor by physical presence. It is omnipresent. It is in everything. It acts through word, thought, pure intention. This revolutionizes our way of praying, asking, interceding. It shows that we don't need to be physically present to make an impact, that consciousness is the supreme channel of action, that faith is a bridge between the visible and the invisible, and it reaches where feet cannot go. It's fascinating to note that this sign occurs right after Jesus' rejection in Nazareth. There, he was discredited. Here, he is sought with faith. This shows us that the miracle also depends on the ground where the word falls. On soil hardened by disbelief, the seed does not germinate. But where there is humility, openness, and trust, life flourishes. The healing of the official's son is, at the same time, a healing of the limited vision that confines God to physical presence. It's an expansion of the idea that the divine is near, even when it seems distant. It's a confirmation that the Word is a vehicle of creation. In the end, we see once again Juan concluding with the statement that this was the second sign. He numbers, not by chance, but because he wants us to see the order, the progression, the pattern. If the first sign teaches us that the substance of life can be transformed, the second sign shows us that distance can be transcended, that the world responds to the spirit, not the matter. That reality is sensitive to the frequency of faith, and above all, that there is no real separation between what is asked and what is granted, between intention and accomplishment, between man and the divine. This sign, therefore, is not just a cure, it is a key, a spiritual code that invites us to step out of limitation and access a new way of living, a way where the word is creative, faith is active, and distance is an illusion, where the verb itself carries the power of "it is already done," where quiet trust opens portals to the manifestation of the invisible, and above all, where the awakened heart recognizes your child lives, and with him lives the truth that reality is a reflection of what we believe to be possible. In the third sign described by John, Jesus approaches a man who, for 38 years, has lain by a pool called Bethesda, a place that supposedly offered healing when its waters were stirred. There, among stone pillars and shadows of hope, a crowd waited for a miracle. But the miracle on this occasion would not come from the water, nor from the external movement, nor from the tradition that promised healing for the fastest, the strongest, the most agile. Jesus enters the scene not as just another spectator of this theater of waiting and spiritual competition, but as the very presence that dissolves the game's rules. He looks at the fallen man, forgotten by the rush of others, and asks a disconcerting question. Do you want to be healed? There is no magical gesture, no rituals, no impositions. Just a question that disarms, that exposes, that penetrates. It is in this question that the miracle resides. It reveals that the key to transformation lies in the awakened desire, not in passive hope. 38 years. This number is not random. It symbolizes a lifetime of waiting, a time long enough for hope to become routine, for the desire for change to be eroded by complacency. The paralytic is not just physically limited, he is spiritually paralyzed. His response to Jesus is revealing. Instead of saying yes, he justifies his condition. I have no one to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up. He does not answer the question asked. He responds to the belief he carries. This is the crucial point. We are so conditioned to believe that transformation depends on external factors that we forget about the creative power that exists within us. Jesus doesn't play this game. He ignores the victim narrative. He does not validate the helplessness. Instead, he says, "Get up, take your mat, and walk." 3 commands, total liberation. The impossible happens, not because Jesus imposed something on the physical world, but because he awakened in the man a new state of being. The healing here is not only physical, but existential. The man doesn't just get up, He carries his bed. He takes with him the symbol of his former condition, now transformed into a testimony of power. This is deeply symbolic. It's not enough to change internally. This change must be integrated into practical life. Carrying the bed is taking responsibility for one's own process. It's telling the world, I've been healed, and I don't hide where I came from. It's making the past an altar of transformation, not a prison of identity. Jesus could have ordered someone to throw the bed away, but no, he commands the man to carry it. What was once a sign of limitation now becomes evidence of overcoming. This shows that true healing doesn't deny the past. True healing redeems the past, transforming it into power. Another element that makes this sign so powerful is the religious context. The miracle occurs on a Saturday, a sacred day for the Jews, when no work was allowed. This sparks controversy, scandal, outrage. But Jesus does not back down. By healing on the Sabbath, he challenges not just a rule, but a belief structure that prioritized ritual over life. He reveals that consciousness is not subject to the calendar, that the spirit does not obey the boundaries imposed by human doctrines. This gesture shows that often the first step to healing is to break away from the system that justifies illness. Jesus didn't just heal a body, he confronted a paradigm. He placed the human being above the norm. He restored dignity above tradition. And this invites us to reflect. How often are our religious beliefs the true obstacles to transformation? The question, do you want to be healed, echoes through the centuries as a divine provocation. It unmasks the comfort of pain. Because, as incredible as it may seem, there is a certain relief in remaining in the known, even if that known is suffering. The paralysis of the man at Bethesda is not only muscular, it's psychic, emotional, existential. He has become accustomed to the pool, to the waiting, to the identity of being ill. This is something common in the human process. We spend so much time stuck in a story that even when the door opens, we hesitate to cross it. True healing requires courage. It requires abandoning the previous narrative. It requires willingness to live a new reality, and not everyone wants that. That's why the question is so important. Do you want to? The third sign also reveals a break with the idea of merit. The man did nothing to be healed. He didn't pray, he didn't fast, he didn't show active faith. He was just there. This shows that grace doesn't depend on performance, that Christ's presence doesn't require a spiritual resume. That transformation can come even to those who have lost hope. This frees us from the tyranny of spiritual meritocracy. Jesus doesn't choose the most devout, the hardest working, the most enlightened. He chooses the invisible, the marginalized, the forgotten. And with this he affirms, the miracle is not a reward. It is a revelation of what is possible when truth touches existence. There's also a curious detail. Jesus disappears right after the healing. He doesn't give a speech. He doesn't ask for recognition. He doesn't demand gratitude. He just withdraws. This shows that the real miracle doesn't need an audience, that the true agent of healing doesn't seek glory. And more than that, the miracle is just the beginning of a new path. The healed man now needs to take a stand, accept his new condition, deal with the astonishment of others. The transformation doesn't end with the divine gesture. It expands in the responsibility of living according to the new truth. This is revolutionary. Many want the healing. Few want the path it requires. Later, Jesus encounters the man again in the temple and says, "Behold, you are healed. Sin no more, lest a worse thing come upon you." This phrase, often misunderstood, is not a threat. It's a compassionate warning. He is saying, now that you have been set free, live according to that freedom. Do not return to the mental patterns that imprisoned you for so long. Do not rebuild the prison with different bricks. This is a vital lesson. Physical healing is just the beginning. True transformation requires continuous alignment with expanded consciousness. Relapses occur when we return to vibrating at the same frequencies that originated our pain. The miracle lifts us up, but it is our responsibility to remain at this new level. This sign invites us to reassess what it means to be paralyzed. How many of us are standing on the edge of our own pools, waiting for something external to move us? How many of us are stuck in the belief that transformation will come when the waters move? Jesus breaks this weight. He says that the movement begins within, that change does not depend on circumstances, but on decision, that the miracle is not in the pool, but in the activation of the will. This changes everything. This takes the power from the external and returns it to the internal. This dethrones chance and enthrones consciousness. The third sign is, therefore, a denouncement against spiritual stagnation disguised as religiosity. It's a call to action, an invitation to responsibility, a declaration that reality responds to the will aligned with the truth. When Jesus says, "Rise up," he is speaking to all of us. He is saying, stop waiting, rise up, take your bed, walk, become whole, live your truth. And in doing so, he rewrites the reality of the man from Bethesda and invites each one of us to do the same. The fourth sign, narrated with intensity and depth by all the evangelists, but uniquely revealed by John, is the multiplication of the loaves and fishes. This sign marks a powerful turning point in Jesus' acts. Up to this point, he transformed substances, healed from a distance, and challenged mental and spiritual paralysis. Now he turns to a fundamental need, hunger. Not just symbolic hunger, but real, bodily, collective hunger. A hungry crowd follows him, thirsty for his presence, and, literally, void of provisions. It is in this context of apparent scarcity that Jesus performs one of the most recognizable signs of his ministry, feeding 5,000 people with just 5 loaves and 2 fishes. But behind this grand feat, there is a deeply spiritual message about abundance, awareness, and the true nature of reality. The first major lesson from this sign is the deconstruction of the idea of lack. Jesus does not create from nothing. He starts with the little. This is revolutionary. He does not wait for external abundance to act. He starts with what is available. This gesture reveals that abundance is not a matter of quantity, but of awareness. What seems small in the hands of the ego becomes infinite in the hands of faith. The disciples, trapped in the logic of scarcity, wonder how to feed so many with so little. Jesus, however, does not question. He takes what there is, gives thanks, and moves on. The gratitude precedes the multiplication. This is subtle but powerful. Jesus teaches that gratitude is the key to accessing fullness, that the recognition of the present gift is the gateway to its expansion. The act of breaking bread is also loaded with symbolism. It not only multiplies, it breaks, divides, distributes. This shows us that true abundance is not possessive. It manifests itself in sharing. The miracle happens at the moment when the bread ceases to be property and becomes a gift. This contradicts the logic of the world, where accumulation is seen as synonymous with success. Jesus reverses this logic. He shows that the flow of life depends on generosity, that what is retained corrupts, but what is shared expands, and more, that multiplication is a continuous process. As long as there is sharing, there is a miracle. As long as there is giving, there is provision. This is the hidden code of the sign. Life responds to the frequency of abundance when we behave as channels, not as vaults. Another impressive aspect is the organization of the miracle. John describes that Jesus instructs the people to sit in groups. He organizes the space. He prepares the field. This teaches us that abundance is not chaos, it's order. That manifestation requires structure. That the spiritual also demands preparation. Often, we desire miracles without offering a fertile field. Jesus' gesture is pedagogical. Before feeding, he harmonizes the environment. He creates a pattern of reception. This is a spiritual technology. For the blessing to come, there must be space, organization, readiness. Inner chaos blocks the flow of abundance. But clarity, silence, internal order open the doors to overflow. John also mentions that Jesus knew what he was going to do from the start. He asks Philip how to feed the people not because he needs answers, but to provoke a shift in perception. This reveals that often the divine's questions are invitations to awakening, not requests for information. Jesus already saw the miracle accomplished. He was already resonating with the reality where everyone was satisfied. This shows us the key to conscious creation. One does not act from doubt, but from inner certainty. The external world is just a reflection of the inner conviction. Christ does not see what is lacking, he sees what already is. And for this reason, the world adjusts to his vision. Reality does not impose limits on those who resonate from the source. The act of gathering the remaining pieces also carries a precious message. After everyone has eaten, Jesus orders to collect the leftover pieces so that nothing is lost. 12 full baskets remain. This is symbolic. It shows that the abundance of the Spirit is not wasteful, that the excess of grace does not negate responsibility, that even when there is more than enough, it is still necessary to care for, honor, and cherish. This is a vital balance. Abundance is not permissiveness. It is generosity with awareness. It flows, but it does not dissipate. It supplies, but also teaches. And the 12 baskets, which reflect the 12 apostles, symbolize that each of those who share becomes a guardian of abundance. The crowd, amazed by the sign, wants to make Jesus a king. This shows how the human mindset tends to associate miracles with power. But Jesus withdraws. He hides. This is deeply revealing. He does not accept being reduced to a political figure. He does not turn the miracle into a platform. He seeks not domination, but transformation. This act teaches that signs are not there to promote ego, but to reveal truth. That spiritual power is not for control, but for service. That true abundance is silent, detached, free from the need for recognition. The real miracle does not shout. It whispers to the soul, and then disappears into the silence of surrender. This sign also resonates with a deep call to collective responsibility. Jesus does not feed individually. He does not cater to one by one. He performs the miracle for all at the same time. This teaches us that true spirituality is not elitist nor exclusive. It is inclusive, universal, expansive. The miracle of the multiplication of the loaves and fishes is a statement that everyone has a right to fullness, that the table of the Spirit has a place for everyone, that hunger, whether physical or spiritual, does not need to be normalized, that the universe is lavish, and that scarcity is an illusion sustained by mindsets disconnected from the source. The loaves and the fishes also have a profound meaning. The bread, a staple food, represents spiritual sustenance. The word, the teaching, the wisdom. The fish, an ancestral symbol of Christ, represents the soul, divine consciousness, the presence of the Spirit in the deep waters of existence. Together, they form the diet of elevation, the knowing and the being, the truth and the presence, the mind and the heart. In multiplying them, Jesus not only feeds stomachs, he nourishes souls. He invites us to a sacred meal, where each piece is a spark of consciousness, and in doing so, he rewrites the reality of the multitude, from lack to abundance, from dispersion to unity, from doubt to gratitude. It is also essential to note that the miracle does not come before the action. Jesus doesn't wait for abundance to appear and then distribute. He starts distributing before there is enough. This is a principle of faith in action. Trust in the unseen precedes manifestation in the visible. Surrender precedes receiving. The decision to share is the seed of multiplication. This forces us to reassess our stance towards life. How many times have we refrained from acting out of fear of not having enough? How many times have we postponed generosity waiting for guarantees? Jesus shows that faith is the assurance of the unseen, and that the miracle happens when we dare to act as if it were already true. This sign, therefore, is more than a supernatural event. It is a declaration of cosmic principles. It teaches us that the universe is abundant, that life is generous, that the Spirit is a provider, and above all, that when we align with this frequency, we become channels of provision for the world. The multiplication of loaves and fishes is a living message for times of scarcity. Lack is an illusion that dissolves in the face of awakened consciousness. Abundance is a reality that manifests through active faith, sincere sharing, and constant gratitude. The fifth sign, although seemingly simple, is one of the most enigmatic and spiritually potent of all Jesus's acts. It does not involve healing the sick, nor multiplying food, nor resurrecting a body. It is about something that, to the eyes of reason, appears merely extraordinary, walking on water. But behind this powerful image, which has fascinated artists, mystics, and scholars for centuries, there is a truth much deeper than a simple miracle. Jesus, by walking on water, does not only defy the laws of physics. He walks over the symbols of the collective unconscious, over the primitive chaos, over the emotional and spiritual abyss we all carry. He steps on the universal symbol of fear, instability, the imponderable, and does so with absolute serenity. The stormy sea, at night under a strong wind, becomes the stage for one of the most silent and impactful signs of all, the absolute dominance of awakened consciousness over the uncontrolled forces of existence. The context of this sign is essential. Right after the multiplication of the loaves and fishes, Jesus withdraws alone to pray while the disciples proceed by boat. It's dark, the wind blows forcefully, the waters of the Sea of Galilee become threatening. The disciples are alone, tired, and far from the shore. It's in this setting of vulnerability, uncertainty, and isolation that Jesus appears, not on the boat, not from a distance, but walking on what represents a threat to others. This is deeply symbolic. He doesn't come flying, doesn't come by land, doesn't come sailing. He comes stepping on the problem, and by doing so, he shows that what is fear for us, for the elevated consciousness, is ground. He transforms chaos into a path, turbulence into support, the abyss into a bridge. He doesn't eliminate the waters, he walks on them. This is pure spiritual revelation. The miracle is not to erase the challenges, but to transcend their nature with a new perception. The disciples, upon seeing him, are filled with fear. They think it's a ghost. This reveals another deep layer of the sign. When we are dominated by fear, even the divine scares us. The presence that comes to soothe can appear as a threat. This is common on the spiritual journey. When we are immersed in inner chaos, we do not recognize the signs of light. Fear distorts vision. It projects threats where there is salvation. But Jesus immediately says, "It is I. Do not be afraid." This speech is a gateway. "It is I," in the original Greek, ego eimi, is the same expression used by God when revealing himself to Moses, "I am." Jesus, by saying this, not only identifies himself, he declares his divine nature. He reaffirms that the presence of the I am is there, in the midst of chaos, walking on the waters, breaking the separation between the human and the eternal. The depth of this sign also lies in the absence of effort. Jesus does not struggle against the waves. He does not confront the sea. He simply walks. This reveals to us that Christ consciousness does not need resistance. It moves naturally over what is a threat to the common mind. This teaches us that true spiritual elevation is not achieved through force, but through lightness. It is not through war, but through surrender to the greater truth. When we are aligned with the presence of the I am, problems do not disappear. They lose the power to submerge us. Walking on water is therefore a metaphor for the sovereignty of awakened consciousness over deep fears, over the unpredictable movements of life, over the winds that destabilize us. The night crossing is also symbolic. The night represents the unknown, the unconscious, the lack of clarity. The sea in all ancient cultures symbolizes the primordial chaos, the mysterious feminine, the uncontrollable forces of nature and the psyche. The boat represents the fragile structure of the ego, trying to remain stable amidst forces it cannot control. Jesus, by walking on the water, shows that stability is not in the boat, it's in consciousness, that the true refuge is not in the external structure, but in the internal connection with truth. When he approaches, he doesn't immediately calm the sea, he first calms the heart, because inner peace precedes external order. In another supplementary account, it is narrated that Peter, upon seeing Jesus, asks to go to him by walking on the water. Jesus allows it, and for a brief moment, Peter also walks. But when he feels the wind, he becomes afraid and sinks. This episode, even though it is not explicitly detailed in the Gospel of John, perfectly complements the teaching of this sign. It shows that the miracle is available to all, but its sustenance depends on focus. As long as Peter looks at Jesus, he walks. When he looks at the wind, he sinks. This teaches us that the reality we live in directly responds to the point where we place our attention. Fear sinks us. Faith sustains us. Doubt pulls us down. Trust lifts us up. Walking on water is possible, but it requires presence, focus, and surrender. Another powerful aspect is the way the episode ends. Jesus gets on the boat, and immediately the boat reaches the shore. This is a detail that goes unnoticed by many, but it carries a hidden meaning. The presence of the Christ consciousness not only calms the storm, it accelerates the process. It shortens paths. It dissolves distances. When the I Am enters the center of life, what seemed delayed gets resolved. What seemed distant comes closer. The spiritual journey is not about avoiding the rough waters, but about allowing the higher presence to find us in them and surprisingly take us to the safe shore. The boat, a symbol of life, reaches its destination not by effort, but by presence. This sign is a living metaphor of the power of transcendence. Jesus is not hostage to circumstances. He does not react to the world. He transcends it. And in doing so, he invites us to do the same. He does not meet the disciples to say that the sea is dangerous or that the night is dark. He comes to show that reality is not what it seems, that waters can sustain, that fear can be overcome, that presence is more powerful than the storm. This sign is not just to be admired, it is to be lived. Each of us in our inner seas can choose where we step, in fear or in faith. It's important to note that Jesus could have waited until morning. He could have waited for the sea to calm down, but he chooses the moment of greatest vulnerability to manifest himself. This teaches us that the divine does not meet us only in stability, but primarily in chaos. It's when we are adrift, in the midst of the storm, that the presence of the I Am approaches with greater intensity. The sign is not just one of power, it's one of proximity. It shows us that we are not alone, that even when everything seems dark, there is a consciousness that walks above what threatens us, to remind us that nothing can submerge the truth of who we are. The sea is not conquered, it is crossed. Fear is not denied, it is illuminated. The storm is not avoided, it is redeemed. And this is the essence of the fifth sign. It does not promise us absence of difficulties, but presence amidst difficulties. It does not promise us calm seas, but steady feet. It does not promise us a life without wind, but a consciousness that walks upon it. This is the miracle that rewrites reality, not to change the circumstances, but to change the relationship with them, not to eliminate the challenges, but to walk over them with such a heightened consciousness that matter itself bends before faith. The sixth sign, narrated in the 9th chapter of the Gospel of John, represents a watershed not only among the acts of Jesus, but also among the deepest layers of reality that he came to reveal. The healing of the man born blind goes beyond the physical restoration of sight. It is a surgical spiritual operation that exposes the roots of ignorance, challenges established religious structures, and reveals the impact of the Christic light on the inner darkness of humanity. This sign not only deals with blindness of the eyes, but with blindness of the mind, soul, culture, religion. The man did not lose his sight over his lifetime. He was born without sight, and this forces us to understand that there are forms of blindness that are structural, that come before consciousness, that establish themselves as a condition, not as a consequence. Jesus, in healing this man, not only returns something that was lost, he gives something that has never been experienced. And this type of miracle has cosmic implications. Right from the start, the disciples ask Jesus, "Master, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" This question reveals a mindset still deeply tied to the logic of punishment and retribution, to the belief that pain is always the result of guilt and that the condition of a human being is a direct reflection of their morality. But Jesus dismantles this view with a simple and profound answer. Neither this man sinned nor his parents, but it was so that the works of God might be displayed in him. Here, he breaks the paradigm of karma as punishment and introduces the concept of the human condition as a stage for the revelation of the divine. The man's blindness is not a mistake, it's a space for light to manifest. Limitation is not a flaw, it's a context for expansion to occur. This is a revolutionary teaching. It changes the question. Instead of who made a mistake, the focus becomes what can be revealed from this. Jesus' actions are also deeply symbolic and intentionally provocative. He spits on the ground, makes mud with the saliva, and applies it to the eyes of the blind man. Then he instructs him to wash in the pool of Siloam, which means sent. This sequence of gestures is a living metaphor. The ground represents the earth, the symbol of humanity. The saliva, fluid of the word, represents the spirit, the living essence of the divine word. By mixing the two, Jesus creates a hybrid substance, the spirit embodied in matter. By applying this to the man's eyes, he is saying that true vision arises from the union of the human with the divine. But it doesn't stop there. The man still needs to go and wash himself. He still needs to perform an action. The cure is not imposed. It is activated by a response, and that response is to go to the place of sending, to immerse oneself in the mission, to acknowledge the call. The man goes, washes himself, and returns seeing. But that's where the real conflict begins. What should be a cause for joy becomes a cause for controversy. The neighbors doubt, the religious investigate, the Pharisees question. They cannot accept that the cure has come outside of the parameters they consider acceptable. This reveals institutionalized blindness. The religious mind, bound to form, ritual, tradition, cannot deal with the action of grace that operates freely outside of their frames. Jesus healed on the Sabbath. He made clay. This was considered work. Therefore, instead of celebrating the miracle, they question its legality. The form matters more than the essence. The dogma matters more than the human being. And this inversion of values is the true blindness that Jesus came to heal. The formerly blind man is questioned several times. Each time his response is clearer, more firm, more convinced. This shows that the true miracle not only changes the body, it strengthens the spirit. The man who was once invisible, who begged on the margins, now speaks with authority before religious leaders. This is a sign of spiritual empowerment. The healing made him see not only with his eyes, but with his soul. And as he affirms his experience, he distances himself from those who, although they physically see, refuse to see spiritually. In the end, he is expelled from the synagogue, rejected by those who cannot accept that grace chooses its own paths, and it is at this exact moment of rejection and solitude that Jesus finds him again. The reunion is moving. Jesus asks, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" And he replies, "Who is he, Lord, that I may believe in him?" Upon learning that it is the one who is speaking to him, the man prostrates himself and worships. This is the culmination of the sign. The physical healing paved the way for spiritual recognition. He not only sees the world, he sees Christ. And more than seeing, he recognizes, worships, surrenders. This shows that the miracle does not end with restoration. It continues to surrender, to communion, to the encounter. Jesus does not just heal. He leads the human being to the recognition of the sacred that inhabits the real. He uses the miracle as a bridge to revelation. Jesus concludes the episode with a sharp sentence, "I came into this world for judgment so that those who do not see may see, and those who see may become blind." This is more than just irony, it's a profound indictment. Those who believe themselves to be bearers of the truth are often the most disconnected from the light. Those who believe they see, but refuse the new, the grace, the unpredictable, are more blind than those who have never seen. This sign is a mirror for all empty religiosity, for any system that prioritizes control over transformation. It exposes the blindness of those who look but do not see, of those who know letters but do not know the Spirit, of those who recite the law but do not live love. There is an even deeper level. The congenitally blind person represents humanity in its original condition, born without seeing the truth, grows without realizing its origin, lives begging for crumbs of meaning. But one day, the incarnate Word passes by, touches, awakens, invites, and the journey of vision begins. First, he sees the world. Then, he sees the conflict. Then, he sees the rejection. And finally, he sees Christ. This is the progression of the human soul. From ignorance to enlightenment. From begging to communion. From clay to spirit. This is the script of reality being rewritten. The light came into the world, and eyes are being opened. Not just the physical ones, but those of the soul, those of understanding, those of awakened consciousness. This sign also reveals the courage of the one who was healed. They do not go back. They do not deny what they have experienced. They do not yield to religious pressure. They assert what they know. One thing I know, I was blind and now I see. This is the most powerful testimony anyone can give. They do not explain the miracle. They do not rationalize the event. They simply affirm their transformation. And that is enough. The lived experience, when true, speaks louder than any doctrine. The sign teaches us that we do not need to understand everything to recognize what is real. That truth imposes itself not by logic, but by light. That the rewritten reality begins with an undeniable experience, lived in the innermost being. Finally, the healing of the man born blind is a revelation of how Christ operates. He does not just respond to requests, he sees the need, he acts with compassion, he triggers awakening, and he leads to truth. This is not a miracle to impress, it's a miracle to enlighten. It's a deconstruction of ignorance, a call to spiritual vision, a sign that the new reality is already available. All you need to do is want to see. The seventh sign, the resurrection of Lazarus, is the climax of Jesus' acts according to the Gospel of John. Here, Christ not only transforms substances, not only heals from a distance, nor merely walks over the laws of nature. He goes beyond all these manifestations and directly touches the greatest of human limits: death. By reversing what is considered the absolute end of physical existence, Jesus not only performs an extraordinary act, but definitively unveils the essence of his mission, to reveal that life is greater than the body, that the spirit is sovereign to time, that reality as we know it is merely an intermediate stage, and that the power of the Christ consciousness can even reverse the seemingly irreversible. The death of Lazarus, his deliberate wait of 4 days, and the final call out of the tomb form a cosmic orchestra, where each element is charged with symbolic layers that resonate not only with the first listeners of the story, but with every spiritual seeker who faces, day after day, the limits imposed by beliefs, fears, and finite existential structures. Lazarus is not a stranger. He is a close friend of Jesus. He lives in Bethany with his sisters, Martha and Mary. This intimate bond reveals a deeper emotional dimension of the sign. Jesus is not here as a distant healer. He is emotionally involved, and it is in this setting, where love mingles with pain, that he chooses to reveal the last and most impactful of his signs before the cross. Upon hearing of Lazarus' illness, Jesus does not rush to him. He stays 2 days where he is. This delay, which seems cruel at first glance, is part of a greater purpose. He declares, "This sickness is not unto death, but for the glory of God, that the Son of Man might be glorified by it." In other words, the situation is not what it seems. The superficial reality, the illness, the death, the pain, is merely the curtain for a much higher revelation. Jesus does not react to the fact, he responds to the truth behind the fact. And this is a spiritual key. While the world reacts to what seems real, the awakened consciousness responds to what is eternally true. When Jesus arrives in Bethany, Lazarus has already been dead for 4 days. 4 days. This detail is not accidental. In the Jewish belief of the time, the spirit could hover over the body until the 3rd day. On the 4th, death was considered absolutely definitive. Jesus waits exactly this long, so there is no doubt. What is about to happen is not a simple resuscitation. It is a complete reversal of a firmly established reality. He enters the environment most laden with sadness, hopelessness, and disillusionment. And it is there, in that ground of apparent end, that he plants the seed of the greatest manifestation of divine power ever witnessed. This is a spiritual pattern. The stage for the deepest miracle is not the place of expectation, but the place of exhaustion. When all human hopes are depleted, divine intervention manifests itself more clearly. Martha goes to meet Jesus and utters a phrase that mixes faith and lament. "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." It is the expression of human pain in the face of the divine's apparent delay. But even so, she adds, "But even now I know that whatever you ask of God, God will grant you." Jesus responds with an enigmatic promise. "Your brother will rise again." Martha understands this in theological terms, speaking of the resurrection on the last day. But Jesus corrects her in a direct and revolutionary way. "I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, even though they die, will live." This statement changes everything. He is not saying that there will be life after death. He is saying that life is already present now, and that this presence nullifies the final power of death. He asserts that death is not a final condition, but an illusion dispelled by consciousness unified with the eternal. This is the greatest rewrite of reality up to this point, the nullification of the absolute power of death by the conscious presence of the I Am. Jesus then asks to be taken to the tomb. There, he finds Mary, the other sister, deeply moved. It is at this moment that the shortest verse and perhaps one of the most impactful in all of Scripture occurs. Jesus wept. This weeping is not just of sadness, but of deep compassion, of identification with human pain, of empathy with the suffering of those he loves. He knows what he is about to do. He knows that death does not have the last word, and yet he feels. This shows us that spirituality is not insensitivity. That knowledge of the truth does not negate the pain of experience. That feeling is part of the process. That tears do not deny faith but express the depth of connection. And by weeping, Jesus reveals to us that the miracle does not require emotional detachment. It requires total presence, human and divine, integrated. Arriving at the tomb, Jesus commands, "Remove the stone." Here, he involves others in the process. The stone represents the barrier, the resistance, the separation between life and death, between the present and the past, between what is and what was. By asking for it to be removed, he shows us that human participation is necessary for divine revelation. There are miracles that only happen when we remove the stones, when we remove the beliefs, the fears, the judgments that keep death entrenched in our lives. Martha protests, "Lord, it already stinks." But Jesus responds, "Did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God?" This question is not just for her, it is for all of us. The glory of God is not a distant spectacle. It is the manifestation of the impossible when faith persists beyond the logical, the acceptable, the rational. Jesus then lifts his eyes to the heavens and prays. But his prayer is also an affirmation. "Father, I thank you because you have heard me. I know that you always hear me." He is not asking for permission for the miracle. He is affirming his communion with the Father. He is modeling for us the posture of spiritual certainty. He speaks aloud for the sake of others. He wants everyone to know that the miracle about to happen is not the result of magic, but of the union between divine will and awakened consciousness. And then, with a strong voice, he shouts, "Lazarus, come out." 3 words, a direct command, no explanation, no doubt, just creative verb. This command is the highest expression of the power of the word aligned with the Spirit, and reality responds. The dead man walks out, still wrapped in bands, still with his face covered by a scarf. Jesus then orders, "Untie him and let him go." This completes the process. Life has been restored, but the bonds need to be removed. This teaches us that even after awakening, there are liberations that need to occur. That resurrection is the beginning of a new journey, not the end of the story. That after the miracle, there is a call to freedom. That spiritual awakening is not just returning to life, it's walking in full freedom. The reality rewritten by Jesus is not just the reversal of death, it's the total liberation from the structures that imprison the being. This 7th sign not only points to the divine identity of Jesus, but it also paves the way for his own death and resurrection. By resurrecting Lazarus, he anticipates the power that will overcome the grave itself. He shows, before the cross, that death is already defeated, that the body can be overcome, but the spirit is eternal, that time can be bent, and that reality can be reconfigured from the frequency of life. Lazarus's resurrection is a portal. It forces us to face where, within us, there are dead parts, buried dreams, sealed hopes, and it invites us to hear the call, "Come forth." It is a summons to life, a divine command to abandon the inner tomb. This sign is also a denouncement. After the miracle, many believe in Jesus, but the religious leaders decide to kill him. The sign that should confirm his mission becomes the justification for his condemnation. This reveals to us the clash between the revealed truth and the control systems. When reality is rewritten by a free spirit, those who live off the old paradigm feel threatened. Life disturbs those who profit from death. Freedom bothers those who have built temples on the prison. And so the most powerful sign of all becomes the trigger for the cross. But even this is within the plan, because Christ knows the tomb is just the beginning of another revelation. With the seventh sign, the resurrection of Lazarus, the cycle of miracles recorded by John is completed, but the revelation does not end there. On the contrary, it is at this point that the deeper understanding of what Jesus really came to do begins, not simply to perform extraordinary feats, but to open human eyes to a new ontology of existence, a new way of perceiving, feeling, living, and co-creating the world. He did not come to merely show us that God can act among men, but to remind us that the divine acts through awakened consciousness, that matter is no obstacle for the spirit, and that reality, as we know it, is far from being static, immutable, or definitive. Each of the seven signs is a break with the dominant narrative of the time, and of ours as well, and together they form a symbolic architecture of rebuilding the human experience. It is not about isolated myths, but about a meticulous plan for the restoration of perception, the activation of faith as a creative tool, the expansion of consciousness as the master key to life transformation. The rewriting of reality begins with changing our relationship with reality itself. Jesus demonstrates with each sign that what we take as definitive is, in fact, malleable. He turns water into wine and tells us that matter is susceptible to transfiguration by divine presence. He heals from a distance to show that time and space are not obstacles for the awakened consciousness. He raises a paralytic who had been waiting for decades for an external miracle, with just a word that activates the inner desire for change. He multiplies bread and fish to reveal that the universe is sustained by principles of abundance, not scarcity. He walks on water and dispels the illusion of insecurity in the face of chaos. He gives sight to a man born blind to show that we are not born limited, but destined for revelation. And finally, he calls Lazarus out of death to prove that not even the end is absolute. Everything, absolutely everything, is susceptible to a new form, new meaning, new life. But this reconfiguration is not just external, it is primarily internal. Jesus does not change the world with magic. He activates frequencies, he accesses dimensions, he tunes in with the primal source from where everything emanates. And by doing so, he teaches us that every human being has access to the same field of creation. The signs are not just demonstrations of power, but spiritual manuals for reconstructing reality from the spirit. Faith, in this context, is not blind belief in dogmas. It is the ability to see beyond form, to access the invisible, to interact with the quantum field of infinite possibilities, with the certainty that what one sees with the eyes of the soul can manifest in the world. The rewritten reality begins when we stop reacting to what is visible and start responding to what is true. The world we know is upheld by narratives. Narratives about what is possible, about what is allowed, about what is natural. But Jesus, with his signs, questions these narratives. He doesn't just challenge nature, he redefines what is natural. For him, it's natural for life to flow without blockages. It's natural for abundance to be present where there is gratitude. It's natural for healing to occur where there is faith. It's natural for death not to be the end. He doesn't break the laws of the universe, he reveals deeper laws, spiritual laws that govern reality at levels not yet perceived by conditioned minds. Thus, rewriting reality is more than just waiting for miracles. It's awakening to the higher laws of being. It's accessing the field of the I am and aligning with the original matrix of creation. This rewriting, however, requires a break with old paradigms. The linear, logical, materialistic mind cannot understand the signs. That's why so many rejected Jesus, because he spoke a language that didn't fit into the dominant system. He claimed that the kingdom of God is within, while men sought it externally. He said that faith moves mountains, while institutions built walls. He touched the untouchable, ate with the outcasts, healed on the Sabbath, called God Father. Everything about him was a subversion of the old model. Because he didn't come to perfect the world as it is, he came to inaugurate a new world, a new consciousness, a new way of being. The reality he presents is incompatible with systems based on fear, control, and scarcity. And for this reason, while attracting crowds thirsty for truth, he also arouses the wrath of those who live off the maintenance of the old world. Rewriting reality is also a call to responsibility, because by showing us that reality can be transformed, Jesus takes us out of the victim position and invites us to co-creation. We can no longer blame fate, genetics, the system, or others. If faith can heal, multiply, restore, and resurrect, then we are called to activate this potential within us. This does not mean denying suffering, but understanding it as a portal for transformation. Jesus' signs do not deny pain, they transcend it. And they teach us that, even in the face of death, there is a voice that can call back to life. The awakened Christ within us is that voice. Reality is not out there. It begins with the vibrational state we choose to live each moment. And this state can be changed. We can decide to vibrate at the frequency of faith, compassion, inner certainty. And when we do this, reality responds. The eighth sign, not directly narrated by John like the others, is Jesus' own resurrection. He not only rewrites the reality of others, he rewrites his own. By overcoming death, he seals the revelation. Life is eternal, the Spirit is sovereign, truth triumphs. The resurrection is not an isolated event, but the culmination of a lifetime of coherence with the divine. And more, it is the inauguration of a new humanity. A humanity capable of dying to the old self and being reborn in the inner Christ. Jesus becomes the first of many. He shows us the way, but also affirms, "He who believes in me will also do the works that I do, and will do greater ones." This is not poetry, it's an invitation. It's a summons. It's instruction for a new way of living. The reality rewritten by Jesus is that of a living, conscious, responsive universe. A universe where every thought, every word, and every action reverberate in the energy field and generate effects. A universe where love is the most powerful creative force, and faith is the channel through which this force manifests. A universe where those who awaken to their true identity become co-authors of creation. There is no separation between the sacred and the profane, between heaven and earth, between spirit and matter. Everything is one. Everything vibrates, everything is an expression of the one, and it is this consciousness that transforms water into wine, that heals from a distance, that lifts up the fallen, that multiplies resources, that calms the storms, that opens the eyes, and that calls the dead back to life. In the end, the rewriting of reality is a return to the origin, where the verb created with pure intention, where the spirit shaped the form, where the being was aware of its divine filiation. Jesus did not come to bring something new. He came to remind us of what we have forgotten. He came to reconnect us with the essence that precedes time, with the source from which we emerged, with the frequency that sustains everything. And by revealing this in signs, he gave us maps. Maps to cross the desert of limitation, ignorance, and illusion. Maps that not only show the way but activate the energy required to tread it. Because each sign is not just a teaching, it is a mirror. It reflects who we are, what we carry, what we can become. Now, the choice remains to continue living on the fringes of consciousness, hoping that something external will change our life, or to accept the call to co-write reality with the living Christ within us. The rewriting is not just divine, it is human too. It requires surrender, faith, vision, courage. It requires moving the stone, standing up, believing before seeing, walking on water, breaking bread, opening eyes, emerging from the tomb. And above all, it requires recognizing that the Word became flesh so that the flesh might remember that it too is Word. That everything begins with I am, and from there, all things can be made new. And now tell me, mind unfettered, which of these 7 signs spoke to your soul the most? Write in the comments which part of your reality you feel is ready to be rewritten. Together we manifest in unity the awakening that transforms the world. Here, each of your insights feeds the collective consciousness. And if this video ignited something within you, don't stop here. The next step is already waiting for you. Watch the next video on your screen now. The Book of 33 Steps, the hidden map Jesus left for enlightenment. In it, we delve into the secret map left by Jesus for full enlightenment. A profound path, forgotten by many, but destined for a few who are ready. Welcome back to your origin, mind unfettered. The awakening is ongoing, and you are in.